Hello, everybody. It is Reid Mihalko from readaboutsex.com, and I don't like this camera angle, so I'm going to fix it with my selfie stick. I am broadcasting from the car because I was running some errands. I'm mailing a Sex Geek T-shirt to Israel, I think, today. And it started raining, and I didn't bring my umbrella. So rather than try to go for a walk in the rain and get my camera wet and you all wet, legally speaking, because that's never. I think that's more. Sorry. I think that's more annoying with raindrops on the screen than anything else. Okay, please hold. This is gonna make some noise. There we go. Okay, there we go. So now that just looks better than my steering wheel. But give me one more second. Let's try this one more time. Under the steering wheel. Oh, much better now. Yeah, so rather than get you all wet and get my phone wet, I decided I would just sit here in the parking lot and talk to you today. And then I was like, well, what can we talk about? And I was like, well, braking distance, orgasmic braking distance, and then we'll talk about learning to drive, which is, if you remember, for those of you who have driver's licenses, what learning to drive was like and how overwhelming it was at first. Like I remember my first driving lesson with my instructor beside me, and I was well into learning the signs and braking distance and keep 3 seconds distance between the person in front of you and all that stuff. And now there's dials and pedals and turn signals, and the person who's giving me my grade sitting next to me, and it was really overwhelming. And I freaked out in my head, and it made me really stressful and tense. And that anxiety, with a little a, that stress, that nervousness, all that cortisol and adrenaline did not make me a better driver in those moments. Now, I think the driving instructor knew to expect that, and that most young adults or even older adults learning how to drive would feel overwhelmed. But I did not feel accomplished or competent or confident about my skills. And all I could pay attention to was the voices in my head screaming at me that I was doing a horrible job, and noticing everything I was missing, not all the stuff I was doing right. Or even being able to think far ahead enough to be like, you know what, in a couple of years, I'll be really good at this. Or in a couple of decades, I won't think twice about all of this because it will have been ingrained. And now I'm noticing and checking my rearview mirrors just as a practice, because I got to establish some good practices ahead of time, or establish some good practices in the beginning. Where this comes into sex education and just your own sexual self-confidence is like, there is no driver's ed for your sexuality in, at least I'll speak for just American culture. Most people didn't get trained in the rules of the road when it comes to mapping out their own pleasure. See how I used rules of the road and mapping? That was good. I feel very, very proud of myself right now. This is all coming together. But we didn't get taught how to understand our own bodies, how to understand our partner's bodies, especially if they have different genitalia than us, or even when they do have the same genitalia, that all bodies are actually different, and that they can be different from, Wednesday to Thursday, and that our bodies will change over time as well. My body, now that I'm in my late 40s, does things or doesn't do things as easily as when I was in my early 20s. And for some people, that is just how it goes. And there are ways to, become a better driver in your later years, but that again requires a certain kind of education, and we don't really talk about that kind of stuff. So as I see people saying hello, you can feel free to chime in from where you're watching from, and also if you remember what it was like learning how to drive a car, and how stressful that might have been, just so that other people get that they're not alone. As we continue to talk about driving, learning how to drive, and having it be like learning your own body and how to drive your partners orgasmically wild in bed, to drive them ecstatic with pleasure. The piece I want to talk about is the orgasmic braking distance, which for a lot of penis owners out there and for people who worry about or struggle with the challenges of premature ejaculation, this idea, I believe, I was introduced to the concept by Nina Hartley, for those of you who are fans of the adult film star, ex-registered nurse, and amazing sexual freedom activist Nina Hartley. I think this is where I got the concept, and I'm pretty sure she taught me this. It might have been Carol Queen, who's also an amazing sex educator and sex ed hero of mine, but whoever it was, if you're watching and I didn't mention you and it was you who taught me this, please just call me in on that and let me know, because I do want to attribute great ideas when I can, and I'm not always going to be perfect. But always, everybody, feel free to PM me or message me or do it right in the comments. Reid, that's wrong. It was this person. And also, if you hear about these concepts from other people, because sometimes people come up with concepts and don't get acknowledged for them, just because they didn't have a blog or they're not a teacher. Ida Mandalay is a really great example of somebody who talks about polyamory being like electron shells of an atom. And I talk about polyamory, or at least my sex life, looking like plutonium with so many electrons. And I want to give credit to Ida, because we do know Ida was the first person to ever blog about it. And that idea might have been implanted in my head from a conversation with Ida. And I never really credited Ida on that. And so I try to be better about crediting that concept to Ida, or at least the first blog post, and maybe somebody who was poly 30 years ago talked about it like that. We don't know. And as our industry, sex educators and nerds and geeks, as we grow, I just think it's really great to kind of follow the trail and acknowledge people when you can. That being said, I think this was Nina who talked about the idea of when you're feeling a lot of pleasure and arousal and you're getting closer and closer to orgasm, if that is your goal. It doesn't have to be your goal, but American culture and a lot of other cultures on the planet are very orgasm-centric. It's actually smarter to just be pleasure-centric and not make it about the destination or the arrival, but about the journey. As we sit in a car, and I keep making travel analogies, the idea being, if we look at like a scale from 1 to 10, and 10 is I'm coming, I've hurled myself over the edge and I cannot pull back, I have started having my orgasm or ejaculating. Then 9 is I'm really close to the point of no return. 8, so I'm a little bit further back. 7, 6, you get the idea. The way that Nina talks about it is this idea of braking distance is just like when it's safer if you are 3 car lengths away from the car in front of you, so you have enough time to react, hit the brake, and then for the car to slow down. If you're thinking about orgasm and arousal from the idea of if you're going really fast towards 10 and you try to hit the brakes, there's a big difference when your arousal is like a 6. You're breathing, you're in your body, now it's a 7, I'm getting more aroused, whatever I'm doing to myself or my lovers are doing to me. Now I'm an 8, Now I'm a 9. I'm getting really close to orgasm. I'm creeping up to 9.5. Oh my goodness, I'm teetering on the edge. And then I'm going to slow down and pull it back. Back to a 9. Back to an 8. Back to a 7. There's a difference between that and, oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I'm so hot. I don't know what to do. I'm holding onto my steering wheel. It's a 5. It's a 6. It's a 7. It's an 8. It's a 9. I'm hitting the brakes, but I'm skidding off the edge. Ah! Orgasm. I hope that I had fun doing that little dramatic reenactment here in the car. But the idea of, if your partner, like let's say you're giving your partner a hand job, if they're so excited and you just like pedal to the metal, floor it, and you're just speeding towards the cliff of orgasm, at a certain point, no matter how hard they hit the brakes or you try to slow them down, they just screeching careen off the edge. And Nina talks about, braking distance, like how far are you away from orgasm and how fast is your arousal going, so that you have control to be able to back off and slow down and, not go off the edge into ejaculation. So I always thought that was a really, really interesting concept and a great visual. And then when you combine it, when you pair it with that, learning how to drive was generally very complicated for a lot of people. Then you can apply this idea of just orgasm control, like ejaculation control, things that are covered like in Tantra and in Taoist sexual practices, and things that are covered also in sex therapy and counseling, where, penis owners are trying to figure out like how to have some sort of control. It can be overwhelming when you start trying to track all of these things at once, but if you give it time, if you stick with it, if you, get good tools and educational information that's not shaming you for being a bad driver, especially if you already think you're a bad driver when it comes to being in the bedroom. If you get really sex positive, emotionally, aspirational and inspiring programs or courses or books or educators to like cheer you on, then, and also teach you that it's okay to feel overwhelmed, to feel frustrated, like that's a part of learning, then it can make the journey easier. And also, not to just make this about penis owners, but for those of you who have clits and vulvas, whatever your genitalia, if you want to play with orgasm and arousal and speeding up and then slowing down and going really fast towards orgasm and then slamming on the brakes and maybe skidding and doing donuts or whatever, whatever fun, exciting, cool things that you can do to explore your body and what it does, then this idea of braking distance can be really useful, because for some of us who may have lovers who like to who like to be teased, getting somebody really close to orgasm and then pulling them back, and then getting them really close to orgasm and then pulling them back, or what's also known as edging, like getting somebody really close to coming and just keeping them kind of right at almost. For some people, that's frustrating in a very exciting way. So knowing how to play with orgasm and with pleasure, and being able to listen to and hear people's bodies, kind of, like if you're a car driver, being able to feel the road under the car, through the steering wheel, and through the tires. For those of you who grew up in cold climates, like learning how to drive on snow and ice, like you kind of, you're listening and feeling how the car and the tires are interacting with the road. And somebody who's never driven on snow or ice just hits the gas and then skids out, or hits the brakes and skids out. So this idea of the more that you know, once you get through your your learning curve frustrations. The more you know and the more you kind of practice when you have good information, the more cool things you can do with the car, with your lovers' bodies, with your own bodies. So this is where a nerd like me kind of geeks out on these things. But today's for our little talk that turned into an inside the car while it's raining conversation. I just wanted to give some credit to our Nina Hartley, and if you're a fan of Nina Hartley, or if you're a fan of this breaking distance idea for orgasm, give me some emoticons, and that way if Nina's watching this, she can see some emoticons float by the screen. But I just wanted to share that today. This is also one of the concepts that I talk about, one of the many concepts I talk about in my Sex 10X online course. So if you want some free videos around sexuality and empowerment, and then you would like an invite to possibly do the course or attend the 2 show and tell sex education retreat seminars that I have going on this year, then go to sex10xonline.com and sign up for those courses, or for the free training, and then consider coming and hanging out with me for our retreats where we do some show and tell sex education, and I'll actually be able to demonstrate exactly what I mean that we talked about here in the car while you watch, take notes, ask questions, and then we'll also get to hang out and geek out. On one of those retreats in particular, there's a hot tub and a pool and a sauna, and I'm catering the whole thing, and we're just going to geek out and learn a whole bunch of cool, nifty things, and you'll have some opportunity to go and do homework or take a hike or hang out in a hot tub. And so sign up for the free videos so then you can get all the information to those retreats. That's it. I'm going to be home soon, Allison, if you're watching. And thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. And remember, buckle up when you're in bed. Safer sex, all those things. And leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about the orgasmic breaking distance idea. All right, bye.